The mansion stood on top of the hill, surrounded by tall walls and shiny gates that reflected the sunlight. From the outside, it looked perfect, almost like a palace. People passing by often stared, imagining the life inside. Inside the mansion, everything was organized to the smallest detail. The floors gleamed, the furniture was expensive, and the air smelled faintly of flowers and polished wood. Every room seemed quiet, almost too quiet, as if the walls themselves were keeping secrets. At the center of the mansion's grand hall sat the billionaire, Mr. Donovan, at the head of a long, polished table. His presence was strong, even without words. Everyone in the room felt it. The board members, his advisors, and even the staff who were allowed in his presence bowed slightly in respect, or maybe it was fear. No one dared to speak to him without permission. His reputation as a strict, serious man had spread far beyond the mansion walls. People said he had everything: money, power, influence, but no one truly knew him. Mr. Donovan was dressed perfectly, as always. His suit was crisp, his shoes shined to a mirror finish. He looked calm on the surface, but those who worked with him closely knew that calm was like the surface of a lake on a windless day, quiet, but hiding depths that could surprise anyone who dared to disturb it. Today was a day like many others. Meetings had started early in the morning and would continue late into the evening. Deals were discussed, reports were given, and the staff moved silently, knowing when to step forward and when to disappear into the background. Among the staff, there was a black maid named Clara. She had worked for the Donovan family for many years, long before Mr. Donovan had become a billionaire. Clara had seen the mansion grow, seen its walls expand, and seen the life of luxury fill every room. She knew how to move quietly, how to clean without interrupting anyone, how to serve meals without being noticed. She had a young daughter named Lila, a bright-eyed girl with curiosity that often got the better of her. Lila had learned from her mother to stay quiet, to avoid trouble, and never to speak unless spoken to. But she had a sharp eye, a heart that felt deeply, and a curiosity that no rule could fully contain. That afternoon, the grand hall was alive with tension, though no one said a word about it. The board members shuffled papers, spoke in hushed tones, and occasionally glanced at Mr. Donovan as he sat silently, reading documents with careful attention. His silence spoke louder than any words he could say. It was as if his eyes could see not just the papers in front of him, but the thoughts of everyone in the room. And in some strange way, they did. People felt judged, examined, and found wanting, even when they had done everything perfectly. The atmosphere made the staff nervous. Even Clara felt it. She knew better than anyone that the slightest mistake could be noticed, though Mr. Donovan rarely raised his voice. He didn't need to. Fear had a quiet way of spreading in this house. Lila, however, noticed something unusual that day. While everyone focused on their papers and whispered quietly, she saw something different. She noticed a small glimmer in Mr. Donovan's eyes, a shine that didn't come from the chandelier above or the polished floor. It was the shine of tears. For a moment, she wasn't sure if she was seeing it right. Surely, the man everyone feared, the man who seemed untouchable, could not be crying. Tears were for moments of weakness, and no one ever associated weakness with Mr. Donovan. Yet there they were, sliding slowly down his cheeks. The sight made her heart ache, even though she didn't fully understand why. She felt a pull, an instinctive desire to do something, anything, to comfort him. But she knew the rules. She knew that no one in the room would dare speak to him. The adults around her stayed silent, their eyes averted, pretending not to notice. They were too scared, or maybe too proud, to break the invisible barrier between them and the billionaire. Lila watched, her small hands clenched tightly in front of her, feeling a mix of fear and empathy. She remembered the stories her mother had told her about Mr. Donovan. She had learned that he was serious, distant, and almost impossible to approach. People had whispered that he had lost a family long ago, though no one really knew the details. People said he didn't need anyone, that his wealth was enough to fill any emptiness. But Lila, in her childlike wisdom, realized that money could never replace the warmth of another person, the kindness of a simple touch, or the comfort of being seen. The staff continued their work, pretending nothing was happening. The board members continued their reports, their voices calm, as if a billionaire crying was just another ordinary day. But for Lila, every second felt long, heavy with emotion. She didn't understand why tears were so frightening yet so moving. She only knew that the man in front of her needed someone, even if it was just a small hand, a quiet presence, or a gentle word. As the minutes passed, the tension in the room grew. Everyone avoided eye contact, and the silence became almost unbearable. Lila shifted from one foot to another, her curiosity and concern battling the fear her mother had taught her. She thought of her mother, who had worked in the mansion for years and had never dared to comfort the billionaire in this way. She thought of the stories of servants who had tried to get close, only to be pushed away or ignored. But Lila was small, unnoticed, and maybe, just maybe, that made her free in a way no adult could ever be. She tiptoed quietly, avoiding the sound of her own steps, and looked at the billionaire more closely. The tears continued to fall, unnoticed by anyone else, unacknowledged by the staff who were too afraid to care. The glint of sorrow in his eyes was clear now, and Lila felt something change inside her. She realized that she could not stand by any longer. Her small hand reached for the napkin she had hidden in her pocket, the one her mother had given her for emergencies, though she had never imagined an emergency like this. For a moment, Lila froze. Could she do it? Could she approach the man everyone feared? Her heart raced, but her steps were careful, quiet. She moved past the tables, past the whispering staff, past the advisors who didn't notice her, and reached the end of the table where Mr. Donovan sat. The room seemed to hold its breath. The adults around her continued their silent work, their eyes darting nervously, pretending not to see what was happening. When she reached him, she looked up at his face, now fully revealed in its moment of human vulnerability. The billionaire, who commanded respect and fear, was only a man with tears, a man who had lived alone behind walls of money and influence. Lila's small hand, holding the napkin, hovered for a moment, then moved gently to wipe away the first tear that had escaped from his eye. He flinched slightly, not in pain, but in surprise. No one had ever dared to touch him like this, and certainly not a child who had nothing to gain. The silence in the room was complete. No one moved, no one breathed loudly, and yet the atmosphere had changed. Something delicate and important had begun. In that single, quiet act, a wall that had stood for decades started to crack. And for Lila, there was no fear, only the simple understanding that sometimes, kindness could cross boundaries that power and fear could never reach. The billionaire looked down at the small girl who had touched him without hesitation. His eyes, still glistening, met hers for the first time. It was not the eyes of a businessman, a leader, or a billionaire. It was the eyes of a man who had been seen, really seen, for the first time in a long, long while. And though no one else in the room spoke, the weight of the moment was felt by all. It was quiet, simple, and powerful. In that grand hall, surrounded by wealth, authority, and fear, the smallest presence had made the biggest difference. Lila had not come with a plan, a speech, or an agenda. She came with a heart open to feel what others refused to acknowledge. She had noticed the tears that no one else saw and had acted, guided only by empathy and courage. And in that act, she became more than a child. She became a witness to a truth that many had ignored for years: even the strongest, richest, and most feared among us can be human, can be vulnerable, and can need compassion. After the small napkin had wiped away the billionaire's first tear, something unusual happened. Mr. Donovan sat still, staring at the little girl in front of him. No one in the room dared to speak, but the silence was no longer tense, it was soft, almost gentle. His eyes, usually sharp and unreadable, softened as he looked at Lila. She looked back with courage, her small fingers clutching the napkin as if it were a sword against sadness. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The board members whispered among themselves quietly, unsure of what to do. Some shifted nervously in their seats, while others leaned forward just a little, curious but hesitant. They had seen power in many forms, but they had never seen it meet innocence in such a way. The strength of money and authority seemed to pause, almost bowing to the quiet bravery of a child. Lila, sensing that the moment was fragile, spoke softly. Her voice was barely above a whisper, yet it carried a warmth that filled the room. "Sir," she said, "you don't have to be alone." Her words were so simple, yet they struck something deep in Mr. Donovan's heart. He swallowed, surprised that such a small, young voice could reach him in a way that no adult, no advisor, no board member ever had. All his life, people had spoken to him with caution, respect, fear, or even flattery, but none had ever spoken to him honestly, without worry or pretense. Lila's voice carried no judgment, no expectation, only understanding. Mr. Donovan blinked slowly. His hand, which had rested rigidly on the table, moved slightly, almost unconsciously, as if he wanted to reach out but didn't know how. The tears were still there, glistening on his cheeks, but now they seemed lighter, less heavy, as if a small weight had been lifted. Lila's small gesture had done something that money, power, and experience could not, it had touched his heart. Clara, the maid, watched from a distance. Her own heart thumped loudly in her chest, afraid that the moment could be interrupted. She had seen her daughter act bravely many times in small ways, but never had she imagined that Lila would approach the billionaire himself, the man everyone feared. Clara's hand clenched slightly, not in worry but in quiet pride. She knew her daughter had done something important, something that might change the course of their lives, and maybe even the life of the man before them. The billionaire finally spoke, his voice low and steady, yet softer than it had ever been. "Child," he said, you are very brave." The words were hesitant, almost unsure, as if he had forgotten how to speak without power behind them. Lila nodded slightly, unsure of what else to say. Her heart raced, but her gaze did not waver. She had come this far, and now, she felt a strange bond forming, delicate but undeniable. Then something extraordinary happened. Mr. Donovan's hand reached out slowly, almost shaking, and he gently rested it over Lila's small hand. The napkin was still between them, but for the first time, the billionaire allowed contact that was not formal, not controlled, and not guarded. It was a connection built purely on trust and humanity. The staff around them froze, unsure of how to act, their fear of the billionaire momentarily forgotten. They had never seen him like this, so vulnerable, so human. The room seemed to breathe differently. The air, which had felt tight and serious moments ago, felt lighter now. Even the sunlight streaming through the large windows seemed warmer, reflecting off the polished floors and golden accents of the hall. It was as if the mansion itself had paused to watch this unexpected act of kindness. Mr. Donovan's voice grew steadier as he spoke again, though still quietly. "You remind me of someone I used to know," he said, almost to himself. His eyes, now glistening with a mixture of sorrow and memory, met Lila's again. The little girl tilted her head, curious but not afraid. There was something in his gaze that told her he was beginning to trust her, to let her see him as more than just a powerful man. The board members exchanged glances, uncertain how to react. They were used to commanding meetings, negotiating deals, and controlling conversations, but this situation was beyond their experience. No contract, no speech, no strategy could reach this moment. Only a child's courage had the power to bridge the gap between authority and emotion, and they realized, perhaps for the first time, that there was more to the billionaire than the persona he showed to the world. Meanwhile, Clara approached quietly, her steps measured but confident. She had always been careful around Mr. Donovan, but now, seeing her daughter standing close to him, she felt an urge to step forward. She did not speak, only stayed behind Lila, ready to support her daughter in silence. Clara's heart swelled with a mixture of pride, worry, and relief. She had raised a daughter who could see beyond walls, beyond fear, and beyond appearances. Lila looked up at Mr. Donovan and asked, softly, "Are you okay, sir?" The billionaire paused. His chest rose and fell slowly, as if he were taking a moment to breathe in something he had long forgotten, perhaps comfort, perhaps hope. I haven't been," he admitted, his voice almost breaking. It was a rare confession, one that had no place in board meetings or business negotiations, but here it was, flowing freely because of a child's courage. The room stayed quiet, not out of fear, but out of respect. No one moved, no one dared to interrupt the fragile connection forming in front of them. Even the sunlight seemed to linger, highlighting the soft glimmer of tears and the warmth in Lila's eyes. After a few moments, Mr. Donovan leaned back slightly, still holding the child's hand. "You have a kind heart," he said. "Not many people would," he stopped, searching for words. "Not many people would care about someone like me." Lila smiled faintly, the kind of smile that was simple but powerful. "Everyone needs someone, sir," she said. "Even big people like you." Her words hung in the air, and Mr. Donovan felt their truth resonate within him. He had built walls around his life, around his heart, thinking that wealth and power were enough. But here, in this quiet, golden-lit hall, he realized that he had been wrong. Someone had seen him, not as a billionaire, not as a powerful man, but as a human being. The small gesture sparked a change. Mr. Donovan's shoulders, usually rigid and straight like pillars, relaxed slightly. He allowed himself to breathe more freely, to feel the warmth of the human connection he had denied himself for so long. It was a subtle change, but it was profound. Lila's courage had not just touched him, it had begun to heal a part of him that he had ignored for years. Clara watched, holding her breath as the moment unfolded. She had trained her daughter to be cautious, but she also knew that kindness and empathy often required boldness. And boldness, she realized now, could change everything. Her heart swelled with pride. Lila, just by being herself, had bridged a gap that many adults could not even approach. As the minutes passed, Mr. Donovan spoke again, more confidently this time. "You are very wise for your age," he said. "Perhaps wiser than many adults I know." Lila's eyes widened slightly, not from surprise, but from understanding the weight of his words. The billionaire, the man who seemed untouchable, had acknowledged her courage and her kindness. It was a validation that no award, no recognition, and no amount of praise from adults could ever match. Something shifted in the atmosphere of the room. The board members, seeing their boss change before their eyes, felt a mixture of astonishment and respect. They realized that this was not just a moment between a man and a child, it was a lesson in humanity, humility, and connection. Power alone could not command the heart, but empathy, kindness, and courage could. Mr. Donovan's voice softened even more. "Tell me," he asked, his gaze fixed on Lila, "what made you brave enough to come to me?" Lila thought for a moment, her small face serious. "I just wanted to help," she said. "You look sad, and no one was helping you." The billionaire's eyes glistened. He leaned back slightly, a smile forming at the corners of his mouth, rare and unpracticed but genuine. It was a smile that carried gratitude, relief, and something he hadn't felt in a long time, hope. In that moment, the room changed. The mansion, usually so silent and formal, seemed to hum with a new energy. The walls that had always seemed cold and imposing now felt lighter, almost welcoming. Lila's small act of courage had shifted not only Mr. Donovan's heart but also the atmosphere of the mansion itself. Even the staff, usually invisible in the grand hall, felt the difference. They moved more freely, smiled quietly at each other, and began to feel that perhaps kindness, even in small doses, could reach places where power and wealth could not. Mr. Donovan finally released Lila's hand gently, but the warmth lingered. "Thank you, child," he said. "You have reminded me of something very important, that even someone like me needs care and kindness." Lila nodded, her own heart racing, but calm in the understanding that she had done something important. Clara stepped closer, proud but silent, knowing that her daughter had once again shown courage beyond her years. The moment, though brief, was unforgettable. And for Mr. Donovan, it was the beginning of a journey he had not expected, a journey of understanding, connection, and perhaps even redemption. All because a small child had seen the man beneath the power and reached out, simply, honestly, and bravely. After that quiet moment, the room slowly returned to its usual activity, but the energy had changed completely. Mr. Donovan sat back in his chair, his hands folded on the polished mahogany table. The board members shifted nervously, still unsure of how to act. It was as if Lila's small presence had broken a spell, revealing a side of their boss that no one had ever truly seen. Lila, meanwhile, stayed by the table, her eyes bright and curious. She did not fully understand the weight of what had happened, but she felt it. She knew that the billionaire, the man everyone feared, was different now. He seemed lighter, calmer, almost human. Clara watched from the corner, her heart swelling with pride and relief. She had raised a daughter who could see beyond appearances, and now that gift was shining for everyone to see. Mr. Donovan cleared his throat, breaking the silence. "Everyone," he said, his voice firm but softer than usual, "thank you for waiting. I needed a moment." His gaze lingered on Lila. "And thank you, young lady. You reminded me of something very important today." Lila's cheeks turned slightly pink, and she nodded politely. "I just wanted to help, sir," she said simply. "Help," Mr. Donovan repeated, almost thoughtfully. "Yes, sometimes that is all we need. Just someone to help, just someone to see us as we really are." The room was quiet again, but this time it was a calm, reflective silence. The board members exchanged glances, realizing that the billionaire was not his usual commanding, untouchable self. There was something new in his eyes, softness, understanding, and perhaps even a willingness to change. After a few moments, Mr. Donovan stood up. His movements were slow, deliberate, almost cautious, as if he were testing his own strength. He walked to the large windows of the hall, looking out over the sprawling estate. The sunlight glimmered on the perfectly manicured gardens, reflecting off the fountains and marble statues. Normally, he would have admired the beauty and power he had created. Today, however, his thoughts were elsewhere. He turned to Lila and Clara, his expression a mixture of gratitude and contemplation. "You have given me something I haven't felt in a long time," he said. "A reminder that even in a world of business and power, the simplest acts of kindness matter most." Lila smiled faintly. "It's true, sir," she said. "Even small things can make a big difference." Mr. Donovan nodded slowly, a rare smile forming on his face. Yes, you're right. And I think it's time I start making some changes." The board members murmured among themselves, unsure if they had heard correctly. Mr. Donovan rarely spoke about change, especially personal change. He was a man of habits, routines, and control. But today, something had shifted. A little girl's courage had made him reconsider, had made him see that life was not only about power and money. The billionaire's eyes softened further as he looked at Clara. "I see now why your daughter is so special," he said quietly. "She has courage and compassion, qualities that even adults sometimes forget. Clara bowed her head slightly, humbled by the praise. "Thank you, sir," she said softly. She learned from those who care about her. "That includes me." Mr. Donovan smiled, a warm, genuine smile that reached his eyes. "Then you have both given me a gift today that I will never forget." After a pause, he turned back to the board members, his voice stronger now but still thoughtful. "I want to make some decisions that reflect not just business sense, but human sense as well. I want to lead in a way that recognizes kindness, integrity, and care." The board members listened carefully, some shocked, some inspired. They had seen this man command empires, close deals worth millions, and control rooms full of powerful people. But now, they were witnessing something entirely different, a man learning humility and understanding, prompted by a child's small act of empathy. Lila watched quietly, feeling proud but also aware of the weight of the moment. She had only wanted to comfort a man who seemed sad, but now, she realized that her small gesture was having a ripple effect. Even in the grand hall, with so much wealth and authority, she had made a difference. The billionaire then took a deep breath. "Clara," he said, turning to the maid, "I want to do something for you both. I want to ensure that acts of courage and kindness are recognized, not just in my household, but throughout my companies. I want to start a program, a way to support people who show heart and integrity, no matter their age or position." Clara's eyes widened in surprise. "Sir, that's very generous," she said. "But why?" "Because," he said, looking back at Lila, "I've been reminded today that the smallest gestures can be the most powerful. And if we ignore them, we lose something essential in life. I want to make sure that courage, kindness, and honesty are always encouraged, not overlooked." The board members shifted in their seats, taking notes mentally, realizing that Mr. Donovan's priorities were changing. The billionaire who had been untouchable, serious, and often feared was now showing empathy, insight, and an understanding that money and power were not everything. For the next hour, Mr. Donovan spoke with Lila and Clara, asking questions about her school, her interests, and even her dreams. Lila, normally shy, found herself talking freely about her favorite subjects, her love of reading, and her desire to help people. Mr. Donovan listened intently, fascinated by her perspective, and by the simplicity and truth in her answers. "What a remarkable young lady," he said quietly to Clara. "She sees the world differently than most. She reminds me of what I forgot long ago, how important it is to care for others." Clara smiled, a mixture of pride and relief washing over her. She had always known her daughter had a unique gift, but to hear it acknowledged by a man of such influence felt extraordinary. Meanwhile, Lila asked something that surprised even herself. "Sir," she said softly, "can people really change? Even grown ups who make many mistakes?" Mr. Donovan paused, considering the question carefully. "Yes," he said finally. "People can always change, if they want to. Today, you have reminded me that change is possible, and that even someone like me can learn from a child." Lila's eyes lit up. "Then, maybe you can help more people too," she asked. "I can," Mr. Donovan said, nodding slowly. "I will. I promise." It was a small promise, but it carried weight. The billionaire who had seemed untouchable, who had lived a life of wealth, control, and authority, was now opening his heart to something new, compassion, understanding, and the idea that influence could be used for good, not just for power. Over the next few days, the mood in the mansion changed. Mr. Donovan began visiting employees, asking about their lives, listening to their concerns, and even helping solve problems that had long been ignored. His staff noticed the difference immediately. He smiled more often, spoke with warmth, and even joked in ways that seemed impossible a week ago. Clara and Lila watched all this quietly. They knew that their small actions had sparked a transformation, but they also understood that change took courage and persistence. Lila had sparked the moment, but Mr. Donovan was now choosing to act on it. One afternoon, as the sun set over the estate, Mr. Donovan called Lila into his study. He handed her a small envelope. "This is for you," he said. "A token of appreciation for your courage and kindness." Lila opened it carefully, finding a handwritten note inside. It read, "Your bravery reminded me of the human heart I had almost forgotten. Thank you, Lila. R.D." Her eyes widened, and a smile spread across her face. She looked up at Mr. Donovan, her heart full. "Thank you, sir," she said softly. "You've done more than you realize," he replied. "You've reminded me of what truly matters." That night, Clara tucked Lila into bed, proud beyond words. "You've done something amazing today, my child," she whispered. "You didn't just comfort a man, you changed a life." Lila smiled, thinking about the day. She had come into the mansion with a simple goal, to help someone who was sad. But what she had done was far greater than she imagined. She had sparked courage, compassion, and change in a man who had thought himself untouchable. And that, she realized, was a power stronger than money, stronger than influence, stronger than anything else in the world. The next morning, the mansion buzzed with quiet energy. Mr. Donovan was already in the office, meeting with staff and planning new initiatives inspired by the lessons Lila had reminded him of. Everywhere he went, he carried a softness in his gaze, a kindness in his words, and a respect for the people around him. And as for Lila, she went to school that day with a quiet confidence. She had touched the life of a billionaire, yes, but more importantly, she had reminded herself and everyone watching that courage, empathy, and kindness could truly change the world. No one in the mansion, not the staff nor the board members, would ever forget the day the black maid's daughter wiped the billionaire's tears. It was the day the unthinkable happened. A child reminded a powerful man of his humanity, and in doing so, set off a ripple of change that would echo far beyond the walls of that grand estate. The next few weeks brought a quiet but powerful change in the mansion. Mr. Donovan's presence was different now. The board members, employees, and even the household staff noticed it immediately. He was still decisive and commanding, but there was a softness in his eyes and a patience in his tone that had never been there before. His life of strict routines and relentless ambition was slowly opening to the world around him. Clara and Lila felt the difference daily. Clara noticed that Mr. Donovan would ask how everyone was doing, even the janitors and the gardeners, who had long been ignored. He would stop mid-conversation to listen, genuinely interested, not just as a formality. Lila, curious as ever, observed closely and even helped Mr. Donovan understand the perspectives of younger staff members. She discovered that, in her own quiet way, she could influence decisions without even realizing it. One afternoon, Mr. Donovan called Clara and Lila into the library. The sunlight poured through the tall windows, reflecting off the polished wood and casting warm patterns on the floor. The library was usually a place of silence and strict order, but today it felt alive with anticipation. "I've been thinking a lot about what happened a few weeks ago," Mr. Donovan began, his voice measured and calm. "It made me realize that power without understanding is empty. We have wealth, influence, and resources, but if we don't use them wisely, they mean very little." Clara nodded slowly. "Sir, that's a very thoughtful perspective," she said. "It's rare for people with your responsibilities to stop and reflect like this." He smiled faintly. "Yes, it is rare. But sometimes, it takes a small act of kindness to remind us of what we're missing. Lila has shown me that even the smallest gestures can carry immense meaning." Lila's cheeks turned pink, and she looked down shyly. "I didn't do much," she said softly. "Softly?" Mr. Donovan repeated, a gentle smile on his face. "You did something that most adults couldn't." You reminded me that compassion is not weakness. It's strength. And it's a force that can change more than money ever could. The three of them sat in the quiet library for a while, discussing ideas for improving the household and even the larger companies. Mr. Donovan wanted to start initiatives that encouraged employees to share ideas, support one another, and take pride not only in their work but in their humanity. Lila contributed small suggestions about kindness programs for children, and Clara offered practical advice based on her long experience. Mr. Donovan listened intently, jotting down notes and smiling often, a sight that had become more common in the past few weeks. Word of the billionaire's change spread slowly beyond the mansion. At first, the board members were cautious. They had seen many trends come and go, many attempts at showing humanity that lasted only a few days before reverting to old ways. But as time passed, even the skeptics began to notice real differences. Mr. Donovan held meetings where employees were encouraged to speak freely. He visited factories and offices, asking questions about challenges and listening carefully to the answers. And everywhere he went, he emphasized respect, honesty, and fairness. Meanwhile, Lila's school friends started noticing a change in her as well. She was more confident, more thoughtful, and yet still humble. She would tell stories about the mansion, about Mr. Donovan's new approach, and the ways small actions could create big ripples. Her friends listened, inspired, and some even tried small acts of kindness in their own neighborhoods. One particular day, Mr. Donovan received news about a small company that was struggling. The owner had tried everything to save it, but without success. Normally, Mr. Donovan might have overlooked it, focusing on larger, more profitable ventures. But now, he saw an opportunity to make a real difference. He called his assistant immediately. "Arrange a meeting with the owner," he said firmly. "I want to understand their challenges and see how we can help." At the meeting, the owner was nervous and overwhelmed. He had faced rejection from bigger investors and was unsure if he could continue. But Mr. Donovan listened. He asked questions not about profits first, but about people, employees, and community impact. He asked about dreams and struggles, about what the company had meant to those who worked there. By the end of the conversation, Mr. Donovan had promised support, funding, and guidance to help the company grow again. The owner left the room in disbelief. He had expected a strict businessman, a man who cared only for numbers. Instead, he found a mentor, a leader who understood both success and humanity. Back in the mansion, Clara watched Lila with pride. "You know," she said softly one evening, "your small act at the table didn't just touch Mr. Donovan. It's changing the way he sees the world." Lila smiled, a little uncertainly. "I just wanted to help him feel better," she said. "And you did," Clara said gently. "Sometimes helping someone is bigger than we realize." Mr. Donovan, too, began to reflect on his past. He remembered the times when he had been too focused on deals, too concerned with appearances, too worried about what others thought. He realized he had missed opportunities to connect, to understand, and to make a difference. Lila's small act of kindness had opened a door he had long ignored. One afternoon, the billionaire organized a gathering for all staff members. He wanted to recognize those who had shown dedication, courage, and kindness, regardless of their role or title. The employees were surprised but thrilled. No one had ever seen Mr. Donovan interact in this way, celebrating people instead of just results. He called Lila to the front and, in front of everyone, spoke about her courage and her compassion. "This young lady," he said, pointing to Lila, "reminded me of something very important: the smallest acts can create the biggest change. We often think power comes from wealth or position, but true power comes from understanding, empathy, and courage." The applause was loud and genuine. Lila blushed but stood tall, proud of what she had accomplished without even realizing it. Clara stood beside her, tears in her eyes, overwhelmed by the acknowledgement. Over the following weeks, Mr. Donovan's new approach began to influence other businesses he owned. He introduced mentorship programs, employee wellness initiatives, and community support projects. People noticed that decisions were no longer made solely for profit, they were made for people, for impact, and for long-term change. One evening, as Mr. Donovan and Lila walked through the mansion gardens, he stopped and looked at her. "You know," he said thoughtfully, "I used to think that my world was built only on numbers and deals. But you've shown me that there's another side, one that is stronger, more lasting, and far more important." Lila smiled softly. "I'm glad, sir," she said. "It feels nice to see people care about each other." "Yes," he agreed. "It does. And I want to keep learning. Every day, I want to see how kindness can grow, how understanding can spread. And it's because of you that I started this journey." Meanwhile, the mansion felt different too. The staff moved with more energy and positivity, inspired by Mr. Donovan's visible change. Even the smallest interactions were more respectful and thoughtful. Clara noticed that her colleagues smiled more, spoke more openly, and supported one another without being asked. Lila had sparked a ripple, and now the ripple was becoming a wave. However, not everyone outside the mansion was pleased with these changes. Some business rivals, accustomed to the old, ruthless Mr. Donovan, began whispering and speculating. They thought he was losing focus, that kindness was a weakness. But Mr. Donovan, encouraged by Lila's example, paid no attention to rumors. He knew that true strength came from integrity and courage, not fear and intimidation. One day, Lila overheard a conversation between some board members. "He's changing too fast," one whispered. "This isn't the old Donovan we know. How can he succeed if he's so soft?" Lila frowned slightly, thinking about what she had learned. She realized that sometimes change makes people uncomfortable, but that doesn't mean it's wrong. Courage isn't just about standing up in front of people, it's about standing up for what's right, even when others doubt you. That evening, she told Clara, "Some people might not like the changes, but I think it's the right thing to do. I think he's becoming the best version of himself." Clara hugged her gently. "Yes, my child. And thanks to you, he is. Never forget that small acts of courage can create the biggest waves." As the weeks turned into months, the ripple of kindness and courage spread even further. Employees, board members, and even other business leaders began to see the value of Mr. Donovan's new approach. It was slow, but the impact was real and lasting. And through it all, Lila continued her life as a schoolgirl, unaware of just how much she had influenced the world around her. She continued to help, to learn, and to grow, showing everyone that even the smallest hands can create the biggest changes. The Black Maid's daughter had not only wiped the billionaire's tears, she had sparked a revolution of heart, compassion, and courage. And in doing so, she had shown that true power isn't measured in money or influence, it's measured in the lives we touch, the courage we show, and the kindness we share. The days passed, and the mansion felt warmer than ever before. The air was lighter, and the laughter of the staff could be heard in corners that had once only known silence. Mr. Donovan had fully embraced the lessons he had learned from Lila, the Black Maid's daughter, and Clara had noticed the complete transformation in his demeanor. The man who once ruled with fear and silence now led with compassion and understanding. Lila continued her school life, but she had gained confidence. She knew that even a small act of courage, like wiping someone's tears, could ripple outward and create real change. She didn't boast about what she had done. Instead, she quietly went about her days, helping wherever she could, and observing how kindness could shape the world. People began to notice the difference in her too. Teachers spoke about her thoughtful nature, and classmates started seeking her advice. She had become a small but powerful light in her community. One morning, the mansion buzzed with unusual excitement. Mr. Donovan had called an important meeting with all key members of his companies and household staff. The usual fear and tension in such meetings had vanished. Instead, there was anticipation, curiosity, and a sense that something meaningful was about to happen. As everyone gathered, Mr. Donovan entered, and for the first time, there was no intimidation in his step. He smiled warmly, his eyes sparkling with a genuine interest in the people before him. Today, he began, we take the next step in making our world not just successful, but meaningful. We will combine strength with compassion, power with understanding, and wealth with purpose. He paused, letting the words sink in. Then he looked around the room, his gaze settling on Lila. And this journey began because of one small act of courage from a young girl who showed me that even a billionaire can learn, can change, and can grow. Lila felt her cheeks flush, but she stood tall. She had never expected recognition. Clara, standing beside her, held back tears, proud of the young girl who had changed the course of a powerful man's life. Mr. Donovan continued, I have decided to create a foundation, one that will focus on helping children, employees, and communities. It will provide education, support, and opportunities for those who need them most. And the guiding principle will be simple, every action must be rooted in kindness and understanding. Gasps and murmurs of surprise spread through the room. Many had never seen Mr. Donovan take such steps. But the staff could see the sincerity in his eyes, the unwavering commitment to change. They knew this wasn't a temporary act or a publicity move. This was real, and it was coming from the heart. The foundation grew quickly. Lila, Clara, and other staff members were invited to contribute ideas. Lila suggested programs for young children to learn about empathy, teamwork, and courage. Clara proposed mentorship programs for adults, so they could grow personally and professionally while supporting others. Mr. Donovan listened carefully to every idea, taking notes, asking questions, and encouraging dialogue. In the weeks that followed, the mansion became a hub of energy and purpose. Staff members were motivated not only by financial gain but by the sense that their work mattered. They were part of something bigger than themselves, something that could touch the lives of countless people. One afternoon, Lila was invited to a special meeting with Mr. Donovan and several key company leaders. He wanted to hear her thoughts on a new project designed to support struggling families in the city. Lila shared her ideas clearly and confidently, suggesting ways to provide education, healthcare, and emotional support. Mr. Donovan was impressed. Your ideas are practical, compassionate, and inspiring, he said. It's incredible how a young mind can see things with such clarity. I hope more people follow your example. Lila smiled shyly. I just want to help, sir. That's all. That is enough, he replied. Sometimes, the desire to help is all that is needed to create real change. The impact of Mr. Donovan's transformation extended beyond the mansion and his companies. Other business leaders began noticing his initiatives and took interest in his approach. Some even reached out, seeking advice on how to balance success with compassion. Slowly, the ripple started turning into a wave, influencing not just one person, but a larger community. One day, a news reporter visited the mansion to interview Mr. Donovan. The staff prepared carefully, ensuring that everything was in place. When the reporter asked about the foundation, Mr. Donovan spoke with humility and sincerity. This all started because someone showed me that even the smallest gesture matters, he explained. We cannot change the world alone, but together, through kindness, understanding, and courage, we can create a better future. The reporter, moved by the story, asked, "Who taught you this lesson?" Mr. Donovan smiled gently and looked toward Lila. "A young girl, the daughter of my loyal maid. She reminded me that power is meaningless without heart. She reminded me to see people, to feel with them, and to act with compassion." Lila blushed but felt proud. She had never expected such recognition, but she knew that her simple act of wiping a billionaire's tears had created something larger than herself. Weeks turned into months, and the mansion remained a place of warmth, learning, and growth. The foundation continued to expand, providing opportunities for children, supporting struggling families, and mentoring adults. Mr. Donovan was no longer a distant figure of wealth and power, he had become a leader who inspired, who listened, and who cared. Clara often reflected on how far they had come. She remembered the fear and silence that had once filled the mansion, the tension in the air, and the strict rules that left little room for humanity. Now, the staff laughed, shared stories, and celebrated achievements together. Even small acts of kindness were noticed and appreciated. One evening, as the sun set over the mansion, Lila and Clara sat on the garden bench, watching the sky turn golden. "It's amazing how one small act can change so much," Clara said softly. Lila nodded. "I never thought that wiping someone's tears would matter this much. I just wanted to help him feel better." "And you did," Clara replied. "You helped him see life differently, and now he's helping so many others. Your courage created a ripple that reached far beyond these walls." Mr. Donovan joined them quietly, holding a small book. He handed it to Lila. "I wanted you to have this," he said. "It's a journal of all the foundation's ideas, plans, and goals. But more importantly, it's a reminder that one act of courage can change everything." Lila opened the journal, her eyes wide. She could see the notes, sketches, and plans that had been inspired by her actions. She realized then that her small gesture had grown into something much larger than she had imagined. "Thank you, sir," she said softly. "No," Mr. Donovan said, smiling. "Thank you, Lila. You reminded me of what is truly important in life." The garden was quiet, filled with the soft sounds of birds and the gentle breeze. For a moment, there was perfect peace. Lila looked at the billionaire, not as a distant figure of wealth, but as a man who had learned to see, feel, and care. She understood then that real strength came from compassion, and real success came from the impact one could have on others. In the following months, stories of Mr. Donovan's transformation spread further. Other business leaders, inspired by his example, began to adopt similar practices. Communities that were once struggling began to thrive with the support of the foundation. Children learned the value of courage, adults discovered the power of kindness, and families felt hope where it had once been absent. Through it all, Lila remained humble. She continued her schoolwork, helped around the mansion, and watched as the world changed around her. She knew that she had sparked a change, but she never claimed credit. Her actions were simple, yet their impact was profound. Finally, one evening, Mr. Donovan gathered the staff and family in the grand hall. He stood before them, his eyes reflecting warmth, gratitude, and pride. "We have come a long way," he said. "But remember, the journey does not end here. Each of us has the power to inspire, to help, and to change the world in our own way. And it all starts with small acts of courage, like the one that changed my life." The room erupted in applause. Lila, sitting quietly at Clara's side, felt a wave of happiness and pride. She had done something simple, yet it had transformed not just one man, but an entire community. She had shown that even the smallest hands can make the biggest difference. As the applause died down, Mr. Donovan knelt and whispered to Lila, "You are my greatest teacher, young one. Never forget the power of kindness, courage, and compassion." Lila smiled, feeling a warmth she had never known. She realized that her life, and the lives of many others, had been touched forever by a single, quiet moment of empathy. The billionaire, once feared and untouchable, had become a man who inspired hope, change, and love. And it was all because a small girl had dared to care. From that day forward, the mansion was no longer just a place of wealth and power. It became a symbol of transformation, of hope, and of the truth that courage and kindness, no matter how small, can change the world forever. And Lila, the Black Maid's daughter, remained at the heart of it all, a quiet hero whose small gesture of wiping tears had created a legacy that would be remembered for generations. The story of Lila and Mr. Donovan spread far and wide, inspiring countless others to act with courage and compassion. And the world slowly began to remember that true greatness was measured not by what you owned, but by the lives you touched and the love you shared.